Hello and welcome to our vocabulary workout. In this explainer, we are going to calmly work through 20 essential English words and phrases one by one. The whole idea is to help you feel more confident using them in your everyday chats. So let's get started, shall we? We're going to start things off with words that help describe size and importance. After that, we'll get into words about events and what happens because of them, then words about movement, and we'll finish up with words about actions and status. Let's dive right in. First up, we have the word countless. Now, this is the perfect word to use when a number is just so big, it feels impossible or at least overwhelming to count. It's part of a word family with enumerable and numerous, which all point to a whole lot of something. For instance, you could say, there are countless stars in the night sky. Next, let's look at tremendous. This is a really strong word for anything that's super impressive in its size or its effect. Think bigger than just big. It's often used in phrases like a tremendous effort or tremendous success. It really conveys a sense of something being significant and vast. Okay, the word chief is pretty interesting because it can do two jobs. If you use it as an adjective, it just means most important. For example, the chief reason for the delay. But you can also use it as a noun, where it means a leader, like the chief of police. So it's all about how it's being used in the sentence. All right, let's talk about elevate. Now, of course, you can literally elevate an object, lift it up, but it gets really useful when we use it for abstract ideas. You can elevate a conversation to a more serious level, or a promotion can elevate someone's status in a company. It's all about raising something to a higher, more impressive plane. And to wrap up this first part, we have the word distinct. When you say two things are distinct, you're pointing out a very clear, unmistakable difference between them. They are separate and easy to tell apart. For example, you might say the two theories are distinct from one another. Awesome. Now let's move right along to our second group of words. This bunch is all about describing events and their outcomes, whether they're good or not so good. So let's look at poison. It can be a noun, the actual substance that causes harm, or you can use it as a verb, which is the act of using that substance. A related word you'll often hear is nausea, which describes that awful feeling of being sick. A simple example would be accidental poisoning can cause severe nausea. Now for the word bribe. This is one of those words that's always negative. There's no such thing as a good bribe. It's all about illegal or dishonest payments made to get someone to do something for you, and it's heavily tied to corruption. For instance, he was arrested for attempting to bribe a government official. Okay, let's break down payoff. When you use it as a phrasal verb, it means that all your hard work and effort finally led to a good result. And the noun, payoff, is that final reward itself. So you could say, all her hard work finally paid off when she received the award. It was a great payoff. See how that works? Here's a very powerful word, catastrophe. You don't use this for spilling your coffee. This is reserved for huge, terrible events, major disasters. And the adjective form is catastrophic. A good example would be something like, the earthquake was a terrible catastrophe for the region. The word frequent is pretty straightforward. It just means that something happens a lot. It's all about repetition and patterns, and that's why it's connected to the idea of a sequence, things happening one after another. You might talk about frequent flights to a city or complain about frequent interruptions. Okay, on to our third group of words. This section focuses on concepts of movement, of change, and sometimes of going back to the way things were before. Next up is stretch. This word has a couple of great uses. It can be a physical action, like when you stretch your arms in the morning, but it can also describe the property of a material, its flexibility. For instance, you could say, this fabric has a lot of stretch, so it's really comfortable. So, revert simply means to go back to a previous condition or habit. A key thing to remember here is that you almost always see it paired with the preposition to. You revert to something. For example, without regular practice, he may revert to his old habits. Let's compare two words that might seem similar, resume and backtrack. To resume is all about moving forward again after a pause, like you resume a movie, but backtrack is the opposite. It means going backward, either physically down a path you just took or by changing your mind in an argument. The word pole is interesting. On one hand, you have a literal physical pole, like a telephone pole or a fishing pole. But then you have this bigger, more abstract idea, like the north and south poles of the Earth. And from that, we get the concept of polar opposites, which we use to describe two things that are completely different. When something is consecutive, it means it's happening one right after another without any interruption. The key here is unbroken. It's all about a continuous sequence. A very common way you'll hear this is something like, the team won 5 consecutive games. All right, we're on the home stretch. This is our final section, and here we'll explore words that describe specific actions, conditions, and different states of being. Let's finish strong. So you already know the verb count. It's about numbers, right? 1, 2, 3. But if you add the little word on, the meaning completely changes. To count on someone means you can rely on them, that you trust them. So you could say, you can count on me to be there. The phrases set aside and put aside are useful because they have 2 main meanings. First, you can use them to talk about saving something for later, like, I set aside money every month for vacation. Or, on the other hand, it can mean you're ignoring something for a little while, like, let's set aside our differences and work together. This is a big one. The word retire describes a major life stage, when someone leaves their job for good, usually when they're older. This gives us the noun, retirement, and the adjective, retired. So you hear people talk about planning for retirement or meeting a retired teacher. Okay, this one sounds a bit formal, and it is. Statutory basically just means required by law. A statute is a formal law, so a statutory requirement is something you have to do because the law says so. You might also hear about a statutory holiday, which is a day off that's legally recognized. And for our last word, we have luckily. This is a fantastic little adverb you can just pop right at the beginning of a sentence. It signals that something good happened, usually by chance or good fortune. For example, I was running late, but luckily the bus was too. So now my challenge to you is, which of these words will you try to use in a sentence first?